Hello and welcome to KJ's Kitchen. I am KJ. I am now 15 years a master level fitness trainer, a fitness nutrition specialist, and most important to me, I am a happy mom serving up healthy meals from my kitchen to yours every Wednesday here on Facebook on the Get KJ Fit fan page. If you'd like to check me out over on Instagram, that is at Get KJ Fit. I feel like my video might be a little tilted. Let me fix the camera, maybe. Regardless, we're all a little tilted, are we not? Everything's a little crazy. Well, before you got here, I went ahead and put some bacon on the pan. So I could get things moving a little quicker for us. We're in virtual school. Are you guys in virtual school or are you sending your kids off to school? I know every state is different. I have a couple girlfriends. I'm very jealous. They already are sending their kids into school. Not sure of, what their school's policy or state policies are. But we are online learning right now. So it's been a little crazy the last couple days. And more importantly, I want to be able to be respectful of your time and make sure my kids don't come running and squawking. So all I did to get started, and you can take note of, is I took 5 pieces of bacon and got that started here in this pan. So 5 pieces of bacon, I cut mine in half. We use nitrate free. This one actually is Coleman Natural. Uncured. Uncured means no nitrites. So if you're gonna do the bacon, you're gonna do the deli meat, always go nitrate free. It's called uncured if you're not sure what that looks like. But let's talk about what we're doing. August has been harvest month. So I have been bringing you unique, delicious, mindful recipes on how to use a lot of this abundance that's coming out of your garden. So a girlfriend of mine, Shauna, thank you, hands me a giant overgrown summer squash. I mean, giant. So I was like, well, how am I gonna put this to use? Let me flip my bacon before it burns. There, I think my bacon is done. I'm pulling my bacon off the heat, and I don't want that grease to keep on heating, so I'm just pulling that off. What are you gonna do with this giant squash? Well, I know that a very common thing to do with overgrown squash is making a casserole, and a casserole is gonna involve a lot of cheese. Okay, well, if you are a cheese family, more power to your gut and your waistline and overall health, but I like to recommend people using cheese in moderation, or when they choose a cheese, choose a pungent, strong cheese. So you don't have to use as much, and definitely don't have to go for a cheese meal. So I am going to do a bake. I guess I'd call this a squash bake. I'm adding in bacon. Yes, it's still a fat. So, I guess it's one fat for another, right? But I am going to be using bacon. It's higher in protein than cheese is. And it's gonna add a ton of flavor for not a lot of additives. So there's 5 slices total. It's gonna go into a large bake. This meal is so delicious. You could use it as a side dish, or you could use it as the highlight of the meal. Go ahead and set your oven for 375. I am personally using a cast iron skillet so that I can actually throw this directly into the oven. And that's where I went ahead and put my bacon. And I'm gonna be using the bacon grease. Now here's a little trick in my kitchen. I always have just an empty jar. Of course, it's been washed out. This one was sun-dried tomatoes at one point. But now it's my bacon grease, because I can always go into the kitchen, into the fridge, scoop out a little dollop of bacon grease, throw it on the pan, and I've got myself some done for you cooking oil, right? And it's easy high heat oil. So I do suggest, we don't need this to be so greasy. I do suggest once you've cooked your bacon, as I just finished, you are going to drain out about half of that into your jar. I'm leaving about 2 tablespoons of grease, okay? I'm gonna wipe it on the side just so I don't get a lot of excess. So I've got 2 tablespoons of bacon grease left in that pan. And I got the heat's still already on. And I'm starting with 1 small sweet onion. So it's about this size. I pre-chopped it, so I'm not crying on you. It ends up being a half cup, 1/2 cup of chopped sweet onion. And that's just going into the pan. There we go. And we're gonna start browning that onion in the bacon grease. While that's browning, and I've got my temperature set to medium high. We're gonna chop up our zucchini. Now the deal with these zucchinis when they're overgrown is they're super, super seedy. First I'm gonna take the ends off. You'll also notice they're very rindy. The rind is so thick. I'm not gonna be using all that thickness. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this lengthwise. And we're using the entire squash. The entire overgrown squash. I weighed this puppy. It is 1 pound, 15.4 ounces. That's 0.5 ounces less than 2 pounds. So if you have yourself a 2-pound squash, it is okay. And I'm gonna show you this delicious meal to make sure that you feel you've created a meal with something that seems a little, to me, you're like, oh, that's not the way I eat a squash. I don't eat it with that much rind. What am I gonna do with it? You don't have to shred it up and put it with a bunch of cheese, I promise. So we're scooping out the seeds. I'm just gonna leave it behind here on the counter as I don't have a wastebasket next to me. That's all good. Get the seeds out. Leaves a nice little hollowness. I'm gonna do that to the other side. Now this is while the onions are browning. I'm gonna multitask here, toss up my browning onions. Beautiful. Browning in the bacon grease. All right. My kids are in the bath, and I told my daughter, please just stay in the bath. Don't come running out of here in your little birthday suits. And told them they could be rewarded if they can stay in there the whole time. 20 minutes. Let's see how well they do. Usually about a 20-minute segment. Okay, so I've de-seeded the squash. Now you could take your knife and just go at it. That's what I like to do a lot. Or you can take your peeler and just get rid of some of that thickness, right? So get rid of some of those extra thick edges. It doesn't have to be perfect because just removing some of it, a thin layer of it, makes it more texturally appealing and more like it would be if you had a standard size squash and not this overgrown craziness, right? So, I mean, the flesh of the squash tastes the same. So please, if you are new to summer squash and you forgot about your squash or neglected your garden a couple days, it happens, get to work at working with the squash rather than thinking you're going to dismiss it or throw it over the fence. My mom throws things over the fence she thinks she's not going to use. Okay, we're going to get rid of all those peelings. I'm making a nice little, compost pile behind me on the counter. Not really where it goes, but that's where it goes right now while we're live together. Okay, and now here's what I do with the squash. I go lengthwise, pretty small, think bite-sized pieces. And there you go. See how skinny these are? Skinny little pieces. Now I'm going super skinny pieces. So let me show you the size before I keep cutting. You end up with tiny, thin little squash pieces. Okay, now to me, summer squash, the yellow, and the zucchini, they play so similarly. So if you have an overgrown zucchini and you don't want to make zucchini bread or come up with another way, you could do this same recipe just as easily with your zucchini. I promise you it would taste just as delicious. Okay, I'm gonna get this half of the squash into the pan and get it sauteing. Now this will be going into the oven, so it doesn't take a long time. You do not have to saute it for long on the stove. Ooh, foul! Just dropped my measuring cups, dropping in my squash. All right, those onions are beautiful. They're a little browned on the edges. I'm just gonna stir it up so we can share the heat of the pan. Get that onion wrapped around, the delicious taste of onion bacon grease wrapped around on all that squash. And this heat again is medium high. I had dropped it just a minute ago so my onions didn't cook too fast while I'm chatting and chopping. Other than this, you could prep all these steps and simply cook. But I just do the steps in order to show you my recipe. Okay, so I've got my squash in super skinny slices going the opposite direction now. This one's going to turn over. He's a little... Some of them are longer than others. This is definitely not about getting tiniest bite-sized pieces ever. When they fall in and get chopped again, they even get smaller, no big deal. The beauty of home cooking, right? Everything doesn't look picture perfect, nor should it. Your cooking is a reflection of you, and if mine was, my cooking might just be a hot mess, right? Hot, delicious mess, that's for sure. Here we go, last couple pieces of squash. And then it's all going in the pan. Here we go. Fantastic. That guy looks a little thick. Okay, dropping it all in there. Now this is why I am using a very large cast iron, because this is a lot of squash. After I gutted out those seeds and took off a little bit of that thickness of the rind, we're still talking easily 1.5 pounds of squash here. This is why, you know, if you have a large family, this could be a side dish. If you just feel you want your family to get more into plant-based, no, this is not plant-based, being it's not vegetarian, because I'm putting bacon grease and bacon in this. But my girlfriend, Nikki Dinky, if you've heard of her, she has a book called Meat on the Side. She's been on Food Network, Next Food Network star. She's been on Cooking Channel for Junk Food Flip. And now she's working on another cookbook. Can't wait for it to come out. It's all about healthy family and sneaking in the good stuff for the kids. So I'm a fan. But her concept was meat on the side. And that's what one of these style dishes would be about. You only have 5 slices of bacon, throwing it into this meal that is really focused on the vegetable. Okay, so next step, I'm going to be adding in a can, 1 full can of diced green chilies. This came from, I can see great value, that came from Walmart. I chose medium heat. You could choose hot if you like it hot. And I drained it, cut around, squeeze it out, drained it. And I'm just gonna go ahead and get that into the pan, get those flavors infusing into the squash and bacon and onion. There we go. So you could choose hot if you don't have children you need to be worried about, or if you and your family do like a little extra kick. Because I find that these medium chilies, they're not hot at all. Like, so little of a heat. When my husband was eating this dish, he's like, oh, I love that this is doing this and this is this, and he's giving all the compliments. And I said, do you like the green chilies? And he's like, oh my goodness, I didn't even know there were green chilies in here. So, they're that not hot. So you might even try out the hot, knowing they're not too hot, right? Okay, so next but not least, we're just gonna season it, and it's not even a ton of seasoning. Where's my little measuring spoons? We're going for a 1/2 teaspoon. I use pink Himalayan sea salt. And I round mine just a little because I've got a Danish husband and one of his favorite ingredients in the world is salt. So I go a little heavier on my own personal salting, but I would say a 1/2 teaspoon is a good place to start for you, not knowing where your family likes your salt. And you can add more on your plate, as you can always, right? Okay, we're gonna do a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. This one's organic from Aldi. You can tell always by the label. Again, slightly imperfect. If it's a little rounded, no big deal. Garlic's beautiful. There we go. I'm just brushing it around to distribute, but I'm gonna give it a good old toss. And then pepper, I do the fresh ground pepper. This is a tri-colored pepper. You could do black pepper, white pepper, whatever kind of pepper you like. Pepper it up to taste. Again, pepper adds heat. So that would be up to you how much pepper you want to put in there. Even if you're really frisky, you could put a dash of either cayenne or even throw in a few red pepper flakes. I'm omitting it out of this one. It is an optional one for you to try. There we go. We're just cooking it down just a little bit more while I make the breading, quote unquote breading. I'm using gluten-free breadcrumbs. Let me lift my measuring cups off the floor that fell. Give them a little gentle wipe down so there's no hair in there. Echo, stop. Ooh, so Mama's got something in the oven for you. It's a good chance that it can sit and cool before the end of this segment. Okay. I'm gonna get this out of the oven so I can give her a little sample before we leave each other. You're gonna do a 1/4 cup of gluten-free breadcrumbs. Now, if you're not into gluten-free, I guess you do regular breadcrumbs, right? Now, we don't have any allergies in my family, but gluten-free is important to me because it does cut through the colon, whether you like it or not. The more often you gluten yourself, the more slices and shards you put in your colon. Later down the road, you never know. IBS is a real thing, I promise. Okay, so I have chosen white cheddar. This one's Cabot. Can someone please tell me? Cabot? 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 I don't know how this farm is necessarily pronounced, but it is from Vermont, and it always is a grass-fed, pasture-raised farm. So if I ever see this for butter or yogurt even, or this is a Vermont white sharp cheddar, it's a very smart dairy source. As they are pasture-raised, mindfully raised. So I'm just gonna go ahead and shred up some of this, a 1/3 cup. Again, a little extra is not gonna hurt. If you go ahead and shred and you eyeball it and you're like, oops, maybe that's closer to a 1/2 cup. Not the end of the world, I promise. More flavor, right? Just gonna check it out in here. See, it's a little overflow, maybe 1 extra tablespoon. It's a rounded 1/3 cup at that point. I don't eyeball things. I mean, I mostly eyeball things when I cook, but it's really a fun project to make sure I can kind of put it into something that is measured for you to test drive. But if you cook anything like me, you're gonna make it taste good regardless. I'm just mixing the shredded cheese with the breadcrumbs, and last but not least, a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. I know we just added garlic powder into the actual squash. Now I'm gonna add it into the breading on the top. We're almost done, guys. Was that easy? Could have a full meal in, it's been maybe 17 minutes or so. Okay, so here we go. And I'm chatty. And when you're doing this in your kitchen, you're not chatty. You can chop and prep everything. Boom, throw it down. Got myself my topping. Let me give my squash one more toss. Because it's going in the oven, it does not have to be perfect. Yeah, it's getting cooked up. It's beautiful. I'm gonna go ahead now and chop my bacon and toss my bacon up. It's the last step because I want the bacon to be a little bit crunchy. Ooh, it's got crunch. Can you hear it? Yeah. I do not want my bacon to get all soggy in there, so I only add it right before it goes into the oven. Same with the breadcrumbs. We don't need any of the oils of the zucchini and bacon grease absorbing up in those breadcrumbs. We'd like them to get nice and toasty in the oven. Pretty decently chopped. You know, the more chopping you do on the bacon, the more distributed this particular flavor is throughout. I had the bacon on paper towel. We don't love paper towel, but sometimes you just need it. And soaking up grease is one of those times. Just distributing it. Okay, turning the heat off. We do not need to keep cooking this. The oven has already been set to 375. See, one piece of bacon could use an extra chop. There we go. Okay, make sure that bacon's distributed. Don't have a big old blob in the middle of this because you want those flavors to disperse. And you want everyone who takes a scoop out of this pan to get the same bite. So take your time making sure it's well evenly distributed, that bacon. That's that. Tink, tink. Not so tough. I'm taking my breading, my gluten-free breadcrumbs mixed with white Vermont sharp cheddar, and I am just evenly sprinkling that around. So first handfuls are definitely more of the cheese. The breadcrumbs will fall through. And when you get to the bottom of the bowl, because that's just the way science goes, the little breadcrumbs fall through, you're gonna have a lot more breadcrumb to distribute on top of the cheese. So the word is evenly coat all this stuff. We're there. Now that breadcrumb again was garlic powder, a 1/4 cup of gluten-free breadcrumbs, and a 1/3 cup of shredded Vermont cheddar. I also have, again, from the garden, how amazing, it's from my CSA because we're city dwellers and we don't really have a garden, cherry and grape tomatoes. Some of them I would consider grape. These are a little bit on the smaller side, might be cherry. And this is up to you. How many tomatoes do you want? You're gonna tomato it up, okay? So your choice. Throw in cherry. I kind of give them a little wiggle. So they kind of are placed inside instead of on top. Really pretty. Okay, there we go. And I'm gonna do a couple on the inside for when people are scooping. They've got some tomatoes to choose from. Kind of reminds me of a pizza. It's not a pizza. Okay, I'm gonna show it to you before I pop it in the oven. Give you a little glimpse of what this looks like before it goes in. Here we go, it's going in. Is that pretty? Reminds you of a pizza. It's just a squash bake, delicious bacon. And I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the oven at 375. This oven's been preheated. Whoop. Center rack. Echo. Set timer, 20 minutes.
20 minutes, starting now.
There you go. And then you're gonna get to work at creating whatever other element of the meal you would like to. When you are done, you pull this puppy out. See, he's got his golden, crispy, crunchy. Can you hear it? I don't know, put my earbud up. Can you hear it's a little crunchy? It might be way hot for me. Hopefully it's cooled just a little. I'm gonna go ahead and give her a little bite. Whew. Bacon, squash, onion, cheese, breadcrumb. So if you got a man at home who doesn't love eating his veggies, I promise you, you throw some bacon in there, you got one happy camper. Now this meal is a little more mindful than just having a giant cheese bake with your overgrown summer squash. So hopefully you learned a little bit from me today, and this recipe might serve you. Please share it to your wall. There could be someone out there who could really benefit from this as well. Maybe they've got a surplus of yellow squash going on. I've got one more week to share one more garden harvest recipe with you, so be sure to tune in next Wednesday. If you're not on my email list, I'll be posting a link below so you can get on that list and get a new mindful recipe to your inbox every single week from KJ's Kitchen. I thank you so much for being with me today, and happy harvesting for all of you who are starting school. Good luck. Whatever that looks like in your world, whether that be virtual school, whether you've chosen to homeschool, or you're sending your kids off. Prayers with everyone, safety and love to all. And thank you so much. I'll see you next week. Happy Wellness Wednesday, and you take care.